Hello and welcome to episode 176 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode is with Colleen. Colleen is interesting in a number of ways, but let me tell you something else first. Do you remember back in episode 157, it was called Lindsay is a Cornucopia of Emotions? Do you remember that episode? My conversation with Lindsay came about because I asked a question online about how people might feel if diabetes was just magically cured. When I asked that question online, I came up with two people who wanted to be on the podcast. One was Lindsay, back in episode 157, and one was Colleen, who you're going to hear today in episode 176. And while the conversations begin in the first couple of moments exactly the same, they go in completely different directions. Also in this episode, I talk a little bit about Arden being diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which I don't think I've been as clear about in previous episodes. Colleen just does an amazing job of sharing her life and times with type 1. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She's an adult who has children, little babies. She's married. She's had type 1 diabetes for a very long time, since she was little. And she's a long-time, very active member of the diabetes community online. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making changes to your healthcare plan. Ooh, you know what? I forgot to say something. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Dexcom and Omnipod. There'll be a little more information about both of these great products later in the show, but you can always go to myomnipod.com/juicebox or dexcom.com/juicebox to find out more. There's also links in your show notes.
My name's Colleen Nguyen, Nguyen. I don't know. I've been diabetic for forever, and I work for a camp kids with diabetes in the summer. Yeah, that's about it.
See,
I'm a diabetes nerd.
You're a diabetes nerd. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get something out of the way very quickly. People who listen to the show a lot will understand this. I think that these conversations go the best when they're completely just organic and we don't plan them out. We don't email back and forth or talk about things. In the pursuit of that idea, I sometimes forget why I wanted to talk to people. So here's my recollection. I had this big idea one day, and I reached out and I said to people, if you feel like this, please let me know if you want to be on the podcast. Is that about right?
Yes.
Except I forget what this is.
It was if you wouldn't want a cure.
Ah, perfect.
Yeah.
So it was up between that and adults who are afraid of using insulin because they're alone. I didn't think that was you because I know you're not alone.
No. Definitely not alone.
Because you've got like children and dogs and husbands.
Yeah,
and
you can probably hear my dog a little bit right now.
What's the dog's name?
She's Ruka. Her name's Ruka.
Ruka. All right. Listen, if we hear Ruka, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll dig down a little more into who you are, because you when you described who you are, you're like, it's me, it's Colleen.
I don't know.
So let's do it like this. How old are you?
Okay. I am 31.
All right. And when were you diagnosed?
I was 3 years old.
3. Okay. I'm going to do some math now. Hold still. 28 years.
Yes.
See? It's amazing, right?
Yeah. I usually tell people I was diagnosed at 3 and I've been a diabetic for 28 years, but please don't do the math.
Well, here's what I just did. I don't know if you want to look behind the curtain. I took 31 and I subtracted 1. That got me to 30. And then I realized I had 2 more, and I took off those 2, took me right to 28.
Is that Common Core? Is it?
You know what? That's the one of the guy who didn't go to all the days of school.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've had diabetes forever.
Yeah.
It's interesting, 28 years. You were diagnosed at 3 years old. My daughter was diagnosed when she was 2 years old. Mm-hmm. But you're 3 years old quite some time ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you a question before we get into why,
Sure.
So when Arden was diagnosed at 2, I remember hearing, like, people were like, oh, you don't have to worry because long-term complications from diabetes don't really come into play for like 30 years. And I remember going, well, then my kid will be 32 when that happens?
Yeah.
Like, how is that comforting in any possible way? Like, why would you say that to me? Like, let's say that that's not even true, or it is true, and I don't see it as being true. I don't think there's a number you can put on it. But it was this interesting idea that I thought, oh, this is how they used to make people feel better. They were like, oh, you're 20. By the time this really affects you, you'll be old and you won't care about yourself anyway. And that was the vibe, right? That came from them. Have you had any issues so far?
No.
Nothing.
No. I'm lucky.
And I do see it that way a little bit too.
Yeah.
And because, 28 years ago, let's call it 30 years because it's making my brain hurt to say 28.
Yeah.
But, so 30 years ago, you must have been like, that's not even like big brick meter you get to take home time, is it?
It is. Is it? My very first meter was just called One Touch.
Okay.
Like not One Touch something. It was just called the One Touch. It was the first One Touch meter.
They were like, we'll only ever need one name. This will be great.
Yeah, right? And my second one was called the One Touch 2. Very creative.
I have to say, that sounds dirty, actually.
Yeah.
One Touch 2. Mm-hmm. It feels like there's more to that sentence.
Yeah.
But okay, so you did have a meter, but was it portable?
Yeah. It took, I think 60 seconds, and it was one of those ones you had to put like the big blood drop on the strip. I'm making a motion with my hand right now that you can't see.
Welcome to Pantomime Podcasting with Colleen.
And putting it on, yeah.
So for the rest of the podcast, we'll all just sit very quietly and try to imagine what it is you're doing with your hands.
Yeah.
So it'll probably get boring.
Anyone who's used that strip knows what I'm doing.
Yeah. So you were basically like cutting a vein open and like pouring it on top of the meter. Just going and a minute later, as you're a little dizzy from the loss of blood, it would give you a number.
Essentially.
I wonder if those big meters were more or less accurate than stuff that's available today.
I believe they were less accurate.
You would imagine, right?
I don't know exactly.
Yeah, right. So okay. So you were working with specious data. You were a little dizzy from the blood loss, and you were a couple of years old. I'm assuming. Did one of your parents were your parents together?
Yes.
Did one of them dive in more? Yep. They still are.
Yep.
Well, that's really good news for all the people listening whose kids have diabetes. This probably isn't going to make us all get divorced. Okay. And so
yeah. My mom was my primary caregiver. Right. But my dad helped too. Okay. They were both very knowledgeable, still are very knowledgeable. My mom still, sees my Dexcom information. And every once in a while will text me like, hey, what's going on, with a helicopter emoji.
Colleen, listen, I didn't give up this much of my life for your health to watch you piss it away now.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so is that comforting or is it annoying, or how do you find it?
It is actually. It saved me once. I was up in the middle of the night with my kids, and my blood sugar was like 300, and I use the T-Slim, and I went to put in my blood sugar, and I accidentally put it in the carbs.
Okay. And
I was so tired that I just like, whatever, just do it. And so, I got like 30 units of insulin. Cause,
that's how you want to roll.
Yeah. So, and I, of course, wasn't waking up to my CGM alarms then, but my mom saw it on my share and kept calling and came and knocked on my door and woke me up.
Wow. She actually came to your home.
Yeah.
Does she live close, or was it?
Yeah, she lives close, and she actually works even closer, so it was nice.
But still, she saw you really high, then she saw you dropping really fast, and you weren't waking up, and so she was like, "Look, I'm not. This isn't how this is ending." And so,
and she was right. She was right. Like that saved me.
Yeah, you were in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? So when you put 300 in carbs, you obviously didn't realize it when you did. You weren't like, I'm just going to give myself 300 carbs right
now. No. And it even gave me that like max bolus. It was like, this is your maximum bolus. Do you want to continue? And I was like half asleep, so I said yes.
Absolutely, I do. Let's roll.
Sure, why not?
Let's jump on this.
I'm high. Give me
Let's jump.
Whatever, Pump.
2 feet first into this trash can fire and see where we get.
and just so everyone listening knows, I had infant twins at the time.
Right.
So
Right.
I was very tired.
It's possible you would have just done anything in that moment. But the point is cool. So the Dexcom share really did, it helped you, right? But
saved my life.
So your mom understood it enough that it wasn't just like this weird number that was happening that she didn't understand. She understands it, understands it.
Right. Yeah. And she's called the ambulance on for me numerous times over my life. So
well, that was going to be my next question, is that when you're that young and the technology is not nearly what it is today, was being dizzy part of your life? Was like, do you know what I mean? Like what was did you just test a ton, or how did you handle that?
I was very aware of my symptoms. I would tell my mom I was hungry. That was usually the sign. That's kind of what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
It was a lot of going on feeling more than anything. Yeah.
You know what's so funny is just this morning, we had what I would consider to be a technology meltdown here, where we got up in the morning, Arden's pump needed to be changed, and I didn't expect it to need to be changed. We've been having an issue with the Dexcom, which Dexcom's trying to help us with, but right now it meant I had to do something this morning, so I pushed her out of the car this morning with no CGM on and a pump that had just been replaced. And the last thing I said to her was, well, we had set a timer. I was like, when this timer goes off, test your blood sugar and text me. But the last thing I said to her when she went out the door is I said, hey, pay attention to how you feel.
Yeah.
And I realized I was like, that thought must have been prevalent every day for you. I'll just pay attention to how I feel.
Absolutely. Which actually, I feel that's helped me in other ways in my life. I'm very aware of my body all the time.
I do always think that, I don't know that how many people with type 1 appreciate it, but you're more tuned into your health than most people are.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you really do. I'm able to ignore things about my health every day because I don't have this overwhelming feeling that it could literally kill me today.
Yeah.
You're right. Like, I feel like the things I'm ignoring, I can, that's not going to be a problem until I'm 65, and then I won't care about it.
Sometimes it makes me a little bit of a hypochondriac, I think, but my husband is a nurse and he rolls his eyes at me a lot. But
because you're constantly looking and going, this could be something.
Yeah.
Arden's old site, 2 sites ago. So what is that? 6 days ago? Maybe. Well, we changed the pump a little early, so 5 days ago. I leaned on it and she goes, that's sore. And I remember thinking to myself, like, mental note, keep checking that site to make sure it doesn't get infected, which she's never had an infected site in all these years of having diabetes. And I was still
like, one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was still like, okay, let's try to remember that, Okay. So my initial question to you was, I put it out there. I forget. Let's try to, if we can figure out the genesis of this. Someone online said something that made me feel something. So it wasn't what they said. It sparked an idea in me. And I think the idea that it sparked in me was, are there some people who have just had diabetes for so long that it's part of who they are, and taking it from them might be strange? And I asked that online, and most people came in who were parents. It's funny. The parents came in and they were like,
exactly.
They were like, no.
I say that all the time. It's different if you ask the parents than it is if you ask the actual person.
100%. They were like, take it away. I don't care if she's attached to it or feels like it's her or not. She'll readjust. But some of the adults came in and were like, you know what? I'm pretty good the way I am. I don't need this to change, which I found incredibly comforting, and thought the parents should be comforted by it too, but noticed that they were not comforted by it. And I thought, I wonder if someone would
my mom gets mad. My mom gets mad at me when I talk about this.
So tell me a little bit about it. Like, is it just wrapped in who you are at this point, or how do you feel about that question?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like the shots, the pricks, the pumps that's not the hard part of diabetes. I can live with that. You know what I mean? I don't need a cure.
Right.
I don't need a 100% biological cure.
And do you think that that's because? So let me ask this question. What's your level of concern that you're going to unexpectedly die in your sleep?
I mean, pretty high, I would say.
And still you feel like that? I
feel like I could use better treatments. Okay. There are things that are more obtainable right now that could help. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Do you think your feelings are rooted in, let me think about how to say this. Are they rooted in your kind of, because to me it would be a common sense. To me it's a common sense idea that they're probably not going to cure diseases. Right. Like we've all been around, excuse me, we've been around for quite some time as like a thinking people with medicine. I think we've managed to cure 2, maybe 3 things of the bazillions of things that are possibly could go wrong with you. And so is it just that, like, hey, look, it's fairly unlikely they're going to cure this, so I don't want to think about that? Or is it something?
No. Oh, maybe. I mean, maybe a little bit. I think I'm used to being diabetic. I'm used to having diabetes, and I don't know. Gotta think of how to phrase what I'm thinking.
Cool. Take your time, please. Start using your hands that we can't see.
Yeah,
That's fine too.
I was actually just sitting on my hands. Okay. That'll help. Yeah. I was told that like everyone does, that there'd be a cure in 5 to 10 years, or by the time I was a teenager, I think is what the doctor had told my mom. Mm-hmm. And here I am at 31, and we're not even close. So, I mean, I can't keep hoping for that,
right?
Because it's heartbreaking. There's no, that's not going to happen, and I have to be okay with that. I've accepted it, and fighting for just a cure is not good enough for me.
And
we have to.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I get very frustrated. It's always parents. No offense.
No.
It's the parents who get upset at JDRF because they're fighting for treatments as well as the cure. They're giving money to organizations that are just fighting for a cure, but that's not what we need necessarily.
Yeah, it's a very it's an early feeling. Like, so here's the part you don't know about, right? Which is because you were diagnosed as a little kid and you weren't, it was you, it wasn't like somebody you loved, right? And so the part you don't know about is there are these stages of grief that you roll through as the parent of somebody who's just, forget the word sick. They're just, their lives aren't going exactly the way you envisioned them when you were sitting around your house in your 20s going, look, we're going to have a baby. Everything's going to be so great. And so it's just that feeling of like, I can't fix this. I can't take it away. That's an incredible burden for you. And then you think, well, somebody else should help. And then when you look up and they don't feel like they're helping, you're like, oh my gosh, so no one's going to help us. But I agree with you 1,000,000%. I understand the feeling because I've had it. Yeah. But I agree with you. I was able to push through. But you see it online all the time. Like somebody will come up, like, it'll be Omnipod. I'll put up hey, here's the Omnipod and blah, blah, blah. And this is what it does. And maybe you'd be interested in it. And then inevitably 5 comments down, some lady who appears to be in her 30s and someone's mom goes, stop spending money on all this and just cure it already. And I'm like, well, first of all, if it was that easy.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
Right. It's such a strange statement. Like to me, it sounds like they're saying, would you just stop messing around and go outside and lift the house up over your head? As if that's a possibility in your day, and then you'll hear from people who are, they're conspiracy kind of theorists who say, people make too much money off this to cure it, and like as if there would be no money in curing it, and and they said, well, then it wouldn't go on forever, and people would still get diabetes. By the way, if you came up with a cure, that doesn't necessarily mean it would be, a simple word that just flipped out of my head.
And actually, that's why my kids are in TrialNet. Because
you want to see it coming, right?
Yeah, well, I want to see it coming, and I want to help prevent as well. If you can,
if some data from their blood test.
And everyone else, they're...
Right. See how nice you are? This is lovely.
I know. It helps that I have, a lot of friends with diabetes.
And you do, right? So you're one of those people who I've never met in person, but I genuinely feel...
Oh, we did meet once.
Did we
really?
Met once. Oh my God, in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Okay. So take that away. Forget that we've met once. It doesn't matter that we've met once.
We talked about baseball.
we did. Okay. So forget that part. This is the part I was trying to get to anyway. I was vamping. When I see your face, statically, I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean?
I feel the same way about you and Arden.
Right.
Yeah.
But know you. Not like I bumped into you one time or we talked about baseball or we've texted back and forth or something like that. Yeah. You genuinely feel like somebody, you're one of those people who stayed in the community, but you stayed there because it brings you a great deal of comfort to have these real friends, right? And so if I said to you, I can magically take diabetes away today, so this is the real question. I have a magic wand, and I can wave it over your head and you don't have diabetes anymore. What do you say to the offer?
I have to say that I don't I would take it. I mean, I would. I don't know what I would do with myself after that.
And of course, I would expect you to obviously say you would take it, but then what do you think comes after that? Do you lose friends? Do you lose support systems that are more to you than just diabetes? What do you think would happen next? Like, what would be the backwash?
That's the hard thing, because, like, I'm going to get ulterior. Like, diabetes camp is my passion. If I could do it for a living, I would. And I spend a lot of I don't have free time, but I spend a lot of my time working on that. So I don't, and I do it for the, not for myself even, you know what I mean? For kids. And I don't know. Yeah, it would take that away from me. I don't know what I would do with my life.
So it's funny because I know what you're saying, because you and I talking right now, making this podcast, or yesterday I saw like a study from UCLA that talked about, I don't know, it was sleep or something, you know, and I thought, I'll put that up for people.
I saw that, yeah.
Right. I genuinely, I don't want to say I enjoy doing this stuff. I don't not enjoy it, but it feels like good work, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you took that from me, I'd be thrilled for the people who don't have diabetes, but there would be a void in my life where I felt like, well, I'm not helping people anymore.
Absolutely.
And I don't honestly know what I would fill that with. I feel like as I'm saying it, I'd fill it with Netflix. But
like, what other things could I do? What else do there's nothing that I feel this strongly about. So
maybe I would exercise.
That's not entirely true. If we're friends on Facebook, you know there are things I feel through.
Right. There's things, but would you, it's just an interesting idea that it is, because there are other people out there who don't do that, who don't stay connected to people who are like, listen, I'll say something right now, and I hope it comes off exactly the way I mean it. Yeah. If I shut this podcast off today and never put another one of these episodes up, my kid would be just as healthy. You know, like I might stop learning about diabetes at the pace I'm learning it at, but I wouldn't forget everything. Like I wouldn't be the one damaged by that decision. Right. And as I say that, I think, wow, there would be a lot of other time for things, but then I don't know what those things would be. Yeah. It's just really interesting how something that on day one felt so horrible, and on day whatever this day is, still is horrible. Yeah. But not horrible in the way I expected, I guess. If that makes sense or not.
I mean, it's like shaped who I am. I mean, how could it not? I'm one of those people, I don't normally refer to myself as, you know, a diabetic. I'm a person with diabetes, but I also wouldn't say that it doesn't define me, because it absolutely does.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much of your day, really. Yeah. You know, like even
and my whole personality. I don't know life without it. Yeah. It's been in my mind since I was 3.
Yeah, that's such a strange thing. Like, and so as much as it's something that's not, you know, pleasant, or that you would choose to have. It's not like if I took a person who didn't have diabetes and I said, hey, how would you like diabetes? It's going to shape who you are. Really, it's going to make you care about other people. It's going to, you know, would you like that for that? And they'd be like, yeah, you know what? No. But couldn't I just work on those things on my own? But it's funny. It forces you into that situation. And I will say something that I'm sure I've shared here, but I don't know how clearly I've shared it. For the last decade, my daughter Arden has been using the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump. When I described to you why I think the Omnipod is the right choice for anyone interested in pumping, it kind of sounds simple, right? There's an automatic insertion of the cannula. There's no, you know, things to fuss with. You just push a button and it happens. It's waterproof, so you don't have to take it off for swimming or bathing. And it's incredibly easy to change. When it's time to change your pump, it only takes a couple of moments. Now you might think, well, that all sounds nice, but that's not exciting. But trust me, if the opposite was true in your life, you would find these things very exciting. If you had to take off your pump every time you got a shower, and then you forgot to put it back on, and your blood sugar went skyrocketing up, which happens to a lot of people, then you would find waterproof really exciting. If you were at your softball game and needed a new pump really quick, and only took 2 minutes to switch it, and there was no priming and all that stuff, you'd find that very, very exciting. So while it is difficult sometimes for me to convey the amazing nature of the Omnipod, because it's an insulin pump, it's not a car. I can't be like, hey, it goes 0 to 60 and, you know, trust me, for an insulin pump, it's really, really exciting. I want you to go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, or click on the link in the show notes in your podcast app or juiceboxpodcast.com. Because when you do that, Omnipod is going to send you out a free, no obligation demo of the Omnipod that you can try on and wear so you can decide for yourself. myomnipod.com/juicebox. I will say something that I'm sure I've shared here, but I don't know how clearly I've shared it. Prior to my daughter having diabetes, the person you're listening to right now, this is not the person I was.
No.
Like, I was not this. I was kind, but I was privately kind. I would have never been kind overtly or in public. I wouldn't have gone out of my way to say something uplifting to someone, or
Right.
if you, I wish sometimes I get scared to say this out loud because I almost don't have time for what I'm doing now. But if you saw my private messages and the amount of people who I'm talking to about their diabetes or about, and it's not as much nuts and bolts stuff as you would think. Sometimes it's just like, hey, you did it. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I've been talking to a mom for weeks who just messaged me one day and she's like, I am going to conquer cereal. And I was like, you go get it. I was like, and it was funny.
And then tell me how you did it, please. Thank you.
Well, I can do it, but and I told her how I thought how I did it, but then you have to put it into practice. Then you have to actually find the balance between the insulin and the carbs and the timing and all that crap. And she's like, I'm going to do it. And then someday she'd send me a graph and she's like, look how close I came. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And now I'm her support system now on this endeavor. Yeah. And I like it. I mean, it's I don't dislike that she and I talk about that. And one day, right. the real interesting part is, and for those of you who may have corresponded with me at some point or are considering doing it now, one day you just disappear, which is great, by the way. Like one day this woman just won't send me another message, which means she figured this thing out, you know, and that'll make me feel good. Except I'm always on the other end going, well, just no goodbye at the end, or just one.
Well, I haven't gone anywhere.
But it's something that you would not have if you knew me prior to my daughter having diabetes, and you could look and see the person I am today. That you would never be able to imagine that I would have transformed from that person to this person.
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot too, because I have no idea what kind of person I would have been.
Yeah, you could have been
who knows?
A big butthole or something just can you imagine if I could be in like prison now?
Right? Yeah. Who knows?
That's a sci-fi movie.
I'd be a lot richer. I feel that.
I would definitely have more money. I'd have more sleep. I would. I know that would be a big deal for me. Like I know that. I know that having more sleep would be a big deal for me. I can tell that this is going to adversely affect the end of my life, whenever that ends up being.
Yeah.
That is one thing. I do remember thinking on day 4 of Arden's diagnosis, we were coming out of a carb counting class. That ended up being a waste of time, but we came out of a carb counting class, and my wife said, it just hit my wife like a ton of bricks. She's like, is she going to be able to have a baby? And I was like, are we going to get divorced? Oh. And she was like, what? And I'm like, what? Like, because I never thought, was she going to be able to have a baby? And all I thought was, is this going to be too much? Like, are we like enough of like, is our, whatever it is we are together, like, is it enough to withstand this?
Yeah.
And it's not that I felt like it was like we were or we weren't. I just thought this is an unnatural amount of other stuff, you know?
Stress.
Yeah. And then our endo tells us a month later that the national average of divorce is 1 and 2, but when you add a chronic illness to a spouse or a child, it goes to 2 and 3. And I was like, well, that sounds like more. I was like, why'd you tell me that? Like, I'm already crying a lot at home to begin with. Like, I don't need more of this information, please.
Thanks, Doc.
Upbeat lady. And so,
well, here's my family as an example. My parents are still together, and I have 3-year-old twins.
So, can have a baby, possible to stay married. Right.
Yeah.
So, but you get my point is that
absolutely.
Who knows who you would have been.
Yeah. Well, even like I said, my husband is a nurse. And one of the first things, you know, I mean, he probably was using this as a, he liked to talk to me about diabetes because he was interested in it, because he was in nursing school, and then we got married. You know what I mean? Like, what would his pickup line have been? Who knows?
Hey, I understand your insulin to carb ratio and probably could be helpful with that. And you were like, I don't even like you, but if you could help with my insulin to carb ratio, you're in, buddy.
Yeah. Well, even though like diabetes is such a huge part for our whole family, our whole family dynamic could be different.
Right.
If our family even existed, like, it's crazy to think about.
It's and of course you could make this assertion about nearly anything in your life.
Anything, yeah.
Right. So, had I not bought a waffle maker, maybe I'd be 10 pounds lighter. And so, maybe. I can't say for sure. Well, okay. So you would let diabetes be taken away, which I don't think is any great surprise to anybody.
Yeah.
But it would be a crazy impact on a lot of who you are. And so how do you think who you are because of diabetes is impacting how you're raising your really cute kids?
They come with me sometimes for camp. They see that work that we do, and I think that is important. They actually just went out yesterday. I went on a run to drop off supplies to a woman who was in a domestic violence situation and had to get out fast and didn't have any insulin. So, they come along with me for that sort of thing. And I think me having diabetes and being a part of the diabetes community is good for them to see. Other than that, like, they like to look at my Dexcom. My daughter especially will ask, "What's your color right now?"
Does she think about like yellow and red and all that stuff?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And like yesterday she actually, like, with emotion said, "Oh, it's yellow." And I was like, "You're 3." But you know what mommy's blood sugar, like when I was 3, I felt it. That's different. Like, she saw my blood sugar and knew that I was not happy about it.
Where do you sit with the idea, like when you think about your kids, whether or not they get diabetes or not? I'm assuming you've thought about that. Like, what's that initial feeling like when you think about, I wonder if this could happen?
Yeah, my first instinct is to do everything I can to avoid it. There's all those statistics, all these different things that they say increase risk, and I tried to decrease risk as much as possible. Like, I breastfed them, they got their vitamin D, basically all of that, and I signed them up for TrialNet. But I know that their risk is a little bit higher. It's actually not too far off from any other kid. But if they got it, they're in the right place.
Yeah, well, you would know what to do. That's for sure. Yeah. You're 2 generations into it now. Basically, you've got your mom behind you still, who has this incredible understanding of it, and then yours.
Yeah, I think it would actually be harder on my mom than it would on me.
Do you think your mom feels any unreasonable blame about your diabetes?
I think she does, because when I talk about that, when I read Diabetes Rising and I tried to talk to her about it, she did not want to hear it. She didn't want to hear anything about it. Which is silly to me, because, there's absolutely nothing she could have done. But yeah, she definitely does.
Yeah. And my wife has, her side of the family has different endocrine issues with the female people in their family. Excuse me. And I know that feels like her fault to her. And no matter how much you say to somebody, look, there's no fault in this. You can't, it's not a fault is a decision. Yeah. You know what I mean? If I stand up and decide to, go get my car and hit you with it, that's my fault. I've done that.
Yeah.
But if we have an accident, maybe it's nobody's fault. And, and so she can't, she does a good job of living, not thinking about it constantly, but I know it's been a burden to her at times.
And my son actually has vitiligo, the autoimmune skin disorder. And even that did give me I felt a little, I wouldn't say guilty, but like, you can't help but think that, like, oh my gosh, like, I gave that to him in a way.
It's no different than when you look at your kids and they have your eyes and you're like, oh, my eyes. Yeah. And then you go, oh, my vitiligo, my autoimmune thing. Yeah. Shoot.
I've just got my 4th autoimmune diagnosis. So, like, I guess you're bound to have one.
What else do you have? What else do you have going on?
I was diagnosed with Graves' disease at the end of high school. And then eventually it became Hashimoto's instead. And then I either have RA or lupus. I have like joint pain and swelling. Mm-hmm. And again, like I'm super in touch with my body and I was pretty aware that this was not normal.
Yeah.
And I went to the doc and saw a rheumatologist, and they said it's super early and I'm on meds to hopefully prevent any progression. But that's
first
number
of all,
4.
Let's just say this to go in order. Even if I'm assuming it's a doctor named Graves who figures it out, he's got to be magnanimous and give it a different name.
Yeah.
You don't tell people you have Graves' disease. That's like, what? I have headstone disease? What did you just say to me? Not good. Hashimoto's at least sounds a little sexier.
Yeah, it does. But to be fair, I'd much rather have Graves' disease.
What is the difference? But what is the difference?
So Graves' disease is hyperthyroidism.
Okay.
So like, I lost a ton of weight. Again, I was getting, annual blood work for my thyroid already. Mm-hmm. So they caught it pretty early. But, Hashimoto's is different. I can't keep the weight off. So it's a little more difficult. And Graves' disease, like I was on meds for about a year and a half, and they weaned me off, and everything was kosher. Now I'm on Synthroid for the rest of my life.
Right, and so the tough part about Synthroid is the taking it at the right time and then not eating and all that. So my wife,
when you're trying to feed toddlers.
Yeah, my wife has hypothyroidism. She takes Synthroid. And it was funny because for years and years and years, she had all the symptoms, but she wouldn't test out of the what they called the safe range. So no doctor would do anything about it. I remember forcing a doctor one day, an endocrinologist. I said, "Listen, is the medicine going to kill her if she doesn't have it?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, then just give it to her. Like what are you doing? And in 4 days, she started to feel better. And became and her mood changed, and all of her side effects that were happening were just all started to melt away. And I was like, 7 years we couldn't get somebody to give her that medicine,
Crazy.
And then I guess here's as good a place as any to talk about it. Arden's been taking Synthroid now for about 2 months, so we,
very normal.
Yeah, right. And so I don't think I've said it yet. I haven't. I'm going through in my memory. I'm pretty sure I haven't said it on the podcast yet. Announcement. Dun, 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 dun.
Welcome to the club, Arden.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure she's thrilled. But so it all started with Arden with just we were in between, her last endo appointment. We go every 3 months. She didn't have any elevated numbers at all to speak of. She had one elevated number for hyperthyroidism once years ago, but it was there and then it was gone. It was a blip. But at home, we started noticing her telling me her stomach hurt all the time. She's like, my stomach hurts. So we started paying attention, trying to figure out what's going on. And then we realized she wasn't going to the bathroom for 4 and 5 days at a time.
Oh, no.
Right. And then when she was going, it was her body going, I figured out a way to get it all out of here. And and she'd have this horrible, diarrhea. And then, but their stomach would still hurt. And it didn't matter what was happening. Her stomach hurt. And I was like, so we took her back to endo, got the blood test. And I want to say her number was up around 8.5. And the doctor said, well, we don't give Synthroid until the number's over 10. And luckily I had this experience with my wife all these years ago. I was like, actually, you're going to just do it right now.
Yeah.
And now I'm such a different person. If me today was in my wife's situation with her all that time ago, I would have got her Synthroid on day one. And so we got it, gave it to Arden. 3 or 4 days later, she's going to the bathroom on a regular schedule. And things are starting to get better. She starts growing out of a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm like, cool. Bad and good. It's hard to know how to feel about that. You're so excited that you worked it out.
Yeah.
Sad that it needs to be worked out, I guess. So.
Yeah. Well, my mom was really upset when I was diagnosed at first, and I said, it's just a pill I have to take. This is nothing compared to what I've been dealing with. This is nothing. I can't tell you how many parents of campers I've comforted when they're upset because their kid's going on Synthroid, or they have hypothyroidism. I said, this most of us are. I think at this.
Well, I'll tell you what. That's the first thing that in a really long time made me cry again. Week to week on the podcast, we talk about how I make small adjustments to Arden's blood sugar and how I use Arden's Dexcom thresholds, her low and high alerts, to tell me when it's time to bump and nudge and keep things in range. Right now, for instance, Arden's blood sugar is 101. She's actually sleeping in. It's pretty early in the morning, and I've been managing things right from here. But earlier in this episode, you heard Colleen talk about a moment in her life where, as an adult, she gave herself too much insulin in the middle of the night. Her mother, who was watching her blood sugar on her Dexcom share, was able to come to her house and stop a potentially very dangerous low. That's pretty amazing. You know, that Dexcom share is available for Android and iPhone, and you can share with up to 5 loved ones, so you can give access to whoever you want. Go to dexcom.com/juicebox. Click on the links in your show notes or at juiceboxpodcast.com to find out more about the Dexcom. Wouldn't you like to keep your blood sugar at 101 as easy as I'm doing it? Wouldn't you like to have the comfort of knowing that somebody else is aware of your blood sugar? Wouldn't you like to be able to see your kids' blood sugar while they're at school or outside playing? I'm asking a lot of questions I think I already know the answer to. I think the answer is yes, you would love all of that. So get started. Find out more about it. Dexcom.com/juicebox with links in your show notes or at juiceboxpodcast.com. Well, I'll tell you what, that's the first thing that in a really long time made me cry again. And it was just the idea of 2 things that got me. It wasn't as much about the hyperthyroidism as it was about the 2 things that just, I was like, how did she get 2 things? How is that fair? Yeah. That got me a little bit. So I get where they're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And at the same time, now it's been a few months, her stomach, she clearly had stomach trouble for many weeks. And so she's a little beat up from it, and it gets better and better as it goes. But she needed time to rebound from it. We actually talked to our pediatrician, who just said, look, this is going to sound very not technical. He goes, but she's been eating 4 and 5 days worth of food that's sitting inside of her. I said, he's like, she's distended and things are, she's like, you need to give her time to just, everything to settle down.
Work it out.
Yeah. And I think she's taking Prevacid at night before she goes to bed to help her.
Kid.
It's just, and it's funny because poor kid, absolutely. But at the same time, you see her do it, and it's just, I don't know. It's part of her routine, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't think she thinks much of it. I'm sure she's not thrilled about it, but it's also, I don't see it crushing her.
I found that I joke that Synthroid's like the miracle drug, that it helped fix things that I didn't know were wrong.
Like what?
I was tired, but I didn't realize quite how tired I was, in the bathroom stuff and some of my hormone imbalances. Once I started taking that for a few months, I felt better, even though I didn't realize how bad I felt.
So in fairness, when my wife started taking it, we went back to the doctor and he's like, how are things going? I said, well, I had a emergency grave dug in my backyard, but I filled it in because there were days where she would I'm like, oh my God, she's out of her mind. I'm going to have to murder her. And so because being supportive, not helpful when that's going on. You're just like, hey, and she's just like, I don't care. And I'm like, okay, help me, someone. And so you had that going on too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after I had the twins, my doc kept me on the same amount of Synthroid, and I went super hyperthyroid. And so she took me off of it, and then all of a sudden I went and totally hypo, I don't even remember what my numbers were, but it was outrageous, and which was weird because I was still losing weight, but I had just had twins. So anyway, my husband couldn't believe how much better I was, how much happier I was once I started taking it again.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing with Arden is first her GI issues are clearing up.
Yeah.
But they say that, it's a lot, growth is really, and all of a sudden, every time I look at her, she looks taller.
Yeah.
And I'm like, geez, I wonder how much of this had to do with it. But the one thing we don't talk about is that in the summertime, Arden played in a massive amount of softball, but she also slept a lot too.
Yeah.
And so she'd sleep in, like for real sleep in, you know, and now I'm thinking, I wonder how much of that is that as well. Because I always joke.
It's hard to tell with a teenager too.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's hard to, because I've always joked, my wife's been tired since I met her. Like I've, you know, absolutely felt like that, like forever. You know, my wife can sleep till noon if you let her. Like, you know, if she doesn't set an alarm, she, you know, we used to joke with her at like 4 p.m. I'm like, you've been up for 4 hours. Are you okay? Do you need a nap? Is everything good? And it's just, but it's so unfair. It's such a I was going to curse there, but it's a bad way to live. You know, and it's not something that doctors are really good at. I mean, look at all the improvement Arden's had in a short time. The doctor didn't want to give her the medicine. Yeah,
that's nonsense.
Right. Because she didn't crest a certain number. You know, like 8.5's not normal. No. She was significantly higher, just didn't hit some therapeutic level they had set.
She was clearly displaying symptoms, like.
And I go to a really good children's hospital for her endocrinology, and they still were just like, well, you know, at this number. Now, they didn't fight us when I said, just give us the medicine. It's not like she's like, no, I can't. She's like, okay, I'll send it to your, you know, it was that easy. But she wasn't going to do it on her own. She wasn't going to do it till she hit that number. So it's interesting. All right. Well, not unlike most of the episodes of the podcast, we've gotten fairly far away from the initial question. Yeah. And whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. So
okay, good.
Yeah. So let's talk. Let's just head down a completely different road. So what are your parameters for, like, what do you see as a successful day with diabetes? Like, where do you set like your thresholds for your Dexcom, for instance? Like, when do you consider yourself high?
My Dexcom is set 70 to 180.
Okay. And when do you react to your blood sugar being over whatever? How do you handle it?
It depends. I'm not as strict with it as I was, because I'm terrified of being low right now.
Okay.
Because I'm home with the twins. Mm-hmm. And I have to drive a lot. But yeah, I don't know. I try to follow the insulin on board. I had a habit for a while of stacking insulin, right? Because I get a little too inattentive about it. So I've backed off on that.
Okay. What was that?
I was just stacking and then crashing.
Okay.
Because I usually, being pregnant, I had to be anal retentive. So
yeah, because they want your A1C super low when you're pregnant, right?
Yeah, I was 5.2 my pregnancy.
5.2?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of lows, or?
Not in the beginning, yes, but not towards the end.
Then you kind of got it straight and everything.
Yeah.
So what goes into a 5.2 A1C? Is it an incredible amount of attention to detail for you?
Yes, is timing was big, and living by my Dexcom. I don't know if I could have. Well, I could. My mom said you could have done it without Dexcom, but I didn't have to, and it helped a lot. It made things a lot easier.
Sure.
Yeah, I always had snacks on me just in case. I wouldn't say I ate low carb. I only ate carbs that I knew.
Right.
I didn't eat pizza pretty much throughout my whole pregnancy, but I only ate carbs that I knew exactly how they were going to react and how I could treat it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think sometimes, because we talk on here all the time, and the way I do, handle Arden is I just sort of have the bumping and nudging method. Like I keep these close tolerances, and then I just try not to leave them. And it takes less insulin not to leave them, and because of that, then you don't see the lows, because you're not crushing yourself with insulin all the time. Mm-hmm. And so, but at the same time, you're not wrong. It is, it's effort, right? Yeah. So, I see other people doing it, like, the person I was talking about earlier about, trying to, figure out cereal. Like, she's going to figure it out. She did. It's actually amazing. The graph is stunning. Like, I was like, wow, you really got that straight. But I don't really see it as much about, like, okay, now every day I eat something like this, it's always going to look like this. I always think of that more as, like, now she knows how to handle that. You know what I mean? Like, now maybe she can take that information and translate it to a different food that's difficult. Or I don't think of it as much as about this attempt to be perfect. I just think of it as having this information that you can use to, fight the fights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say a good day for diabetes is when things go the way I plan. But that
no matter what that is, right?
That doesn't happen.
And so you brought up something that I think is really interesting because, when we get back to the initial point, when I asked people, would you want to take diabetes away? And some people were like, well, no. I also had that thought back. Remember, I was talking about the fear of being aggressive with your insulin when you're alone. I couldn't remember if that was the thing I talked to you about. We talk about being bold with insulin all the time on the podcast. And then I do hear from adults who are like, it's hard to do because I'm by myself.
Yeah.
But you're not by yourself, but you're in the same situation. You have kids with you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm caring for two kids, sometimes 3 kids, because I have a stepdaughter too.
Okay.
And I have to drive her back and forth to school, and I have to be able to do that. So I can't. It's hard to take a risk of being low because I need to be able to safely transport them around.
Yeah, it's the same fear for a different reason. So if you're by yourself, you're like, well, what if I get too low to help myself? But isn't it funny when you're around kids, you didn't think, well, what if I get too low to help myself? You thought, what if I get too low and I can't help them?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I always say, when I was pregnant, it was easy to keep those blood sugars low because I was doing it for them. And now I feel like it's hard to keep my blood sugars low because I'm doing it for them.
Isn't that, yeah. And no, but there's two thoughts there. Like that I'm doing it for my kids makes it infinitely simple. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. No matter what, let's forget the diabetes for a second. Just things you think you can't do, you can do. But you need to be motivated by sometimes the love for another human being to do it, because isn't it interesting? The love for yourself, not enough.
No, it's true. It's true.
And I totally have that too. I was thinking the other day about, I had this surgery on my shoulder, which is now over a year ago, and I'm finally in a better place with it. But I haven't moved in the way I wanted to for that whole time. I wasn't able to lift things, throw things, do stuff like that. And now I want to get back into it, and I can't quite find the motivation to handle it. And yet I found myself thinking the other day, it's such a strange and bizarre thought, but my son, we talk about on the podcast a lot, my son's been working out trying to find a college to play baseball at, and he did. And I actually had the conscious thought the other day, I don't want to show up to his baseball games like the chubby dad. Do you know what I mean? And I know that's not why I should worry about my health. But as I thought it, I'm like, God, is that the thing I could use to motivate myself? I don't want to, not that he'd be embarrassed. And not that, it's funny, when I think about myself, I'm not at my ideal weight. But as I go throughout my day, I don't see myself that way. My self-esteem is not such that I think of myself poorly. But when I offered today to do the Giving Tuesday for the JDRF, and they were like, well, send us a picture of yourself. They wanted us to wear the Omnipod Demo, the JDRF did. So I'm wearing an Omnipod Demo for a couple days. And they're like, and send us a picture of yourself with the pod. I was like, wait, I got to photograph myself? I was like, I didn't, no one said that, and if you see the picture on my Facebook page, it'll be long gone by the time that people see this. But somebody said, you look so serious. And I'm like, I found an angle, and I was trying not to drop the camera. And it's just, but I don't, have all those conscious thoughts, then my next thought's not, well, I should really do something about that, because I'm pretty comfortable with myself. And so, but when I thought about it through my kids, I thought, well, I probably could do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's sad or not. I can't.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Good. I'm glad, because it seemed a little sad when I thought. But it's just such a human condition thing. It's easier to care about somebody else than it is to care about yourself for some reason.
Yeah. As a parent, you put them first. So.
Yeah. And even in that, when you're talking about going to diabetes camps and helping those kids, I think I see myself in a way you probably see yourself too. However growing up affected me, I am really a caregiver at heart. I am most comfortable when I'm helping other people.
Me too. Yeah.
The people I know who aren't like that seem so much more successul, and thinner, by the way. But they're like, forget all you people. I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I wish I could do that. And then those people are listening right now, and they're like, you can do it. You're lazy. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. So you keep this 180 and the 70. People listening are like, oh, it must be killing Scott that she lets her blood sugar go to 180. But I get that. I get why. And so you picked a number where you weren't having lows anymore. But so is it just, how old are those twins?
They're almost 3.
Oh, geez, that's got to be exhausting.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
So do you think that once they become less effort, you'll be able to transfer some of it back to yourself?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Kindergarten. I can't wait for it.
Goodbye. Why is everyone crying? Mommy's not crying. Get out. We've loved you enough. It's so funny. You think it's going to be easy, and maybe it will be for you, but the day that my son got on a bus and I had been a stay-at-home dad for every second that he was alive, my wife stayed home from work. She's like, I'm going to stay home from work today and watch him get on the bus and, be there for him when he gets home and like have the whole day together. And I was like, that's a great idea. He gets on the bus and we turn around and we walk back up our driveway and we're standing in our kitchen and I just start crying. And my wife's like making fun of me. Like, you would think she'd be supportive. She's getting a camera, taking pictures of me crying. This is back before digital. So she's got to go to effort to take pictures of me crying. And she's like, oh my God, you're like a mess. And I was like, well, I couldn't even put it into words. I'm like, he's been with me like every second for 5 years. Why did we even let him get on that bus? Why did we even let him get on that bus, Colleen? I don't know that woman driving that bus.
We're easing into it. They're in preschool twice a week right now.
Okay.
It's 4 hours total for the whole week, and I treasure those 4 hours.
So you have a healthier outlook for these things.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think it's different having 2 of them at once.
Yeah. Do you know I'm stopping myself from going, what about 150, Colleen? Could we put it to 150?
I'm okay right now. I'm okay.
I'm
My
not
doctor
telling
is
you
happy.
What is
Fine.
that? It's funny. So let me ask you a question, right? You look up and your blood sugar is 130 diagonal up. You're not getting an alarm, but you happen to see it. To see it. Would you do something there?
If I don't have if I hadn't eaten or anything like that, yeah, I would.
You would. You'd be like, hey, my blood sugar shouldn't be going up like this.
Yeah.
Okay. How often does your blood sugar actually get to 180?
That's a great question. Depends on the day.
Does it sit at 180?
That drives me crazy. That's the one thing I don't like. So like if it's just under that, you know what I mean? If it's like 175,
right.
I don't like that. But especially overnight right now, I can't bring myself to bring it down.
If it's 175, what's the feeling? Like, oh, it's so close. Why don't you just beep so I can do something? Or
no. Like, I mean, if I see it, I'll fix it.
Right.
But
you wish you knew, and it just barely gets to it just doesn't quite get to the point where it would.
Yeah, because I mean, I look at it pretty frequently.
Okay.
Too. It's not like I just go by the alarm.
That's interesting.
Like, actually, I'm a little tweaky right now because right before you called, my dog was on me and she ripped my sensor off, and now I'm like, ah.
Oh, you don't have your sensor on right now?
No.
So you and Arden are in the exact same boat.
Yes, we are.
Very nice. I just sent her a text. I'm like, because I told you, like, I told her set an alarm, right? Meanwhile, she's not really going to test when that alarm goes off. Yeah. So I sent her a text. I'm like, hey, test, and I get hold on. And I'm like, okay, that seems reasonable. But that hold on was like 9 minutes ago. And so now I texted back. I'm like, hello? And here's the thing. I only want her to text because I don't want her to be high. If she was getting, I know how much insulin I gave her. I know what her blood sugar. We tested before she left. I gave her some insulin. I didn't give her enough to make her crash. She'd know if she was getting dizzy, if she was hitting like 65. I'm not worried about her being low, and I'm not even worried about her falling fast. I have enough experience to know that I didn't do something to make her fall fast. If she's going to drop like crazy on that, that thing that happens to you once every 60 days where you're like, wow, why the heck did that happen? That would just be bad luck. I'm not planning for bad luck today. So I'm really wanting her to test so that I want to make sure she doesn't get too high because she's got to have lunch and, she's going to eat in about a half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I mean, with all the growing she's doing right now, yesterday she came home, her blood sugar was great all day. We got a little spike at lunch, but it came right back again. And then she gets home, she has this snack. I totally bolused enough for the snack. And then it just starts climbing. I'm like, more and more. I could not give her enough to stop this spike. And before I knew it, she was like 275. And I was like, Jesus, that never happens to us. So I gave her more and it wouldn't move. And I gave her more. And I'm like, drink this water. And she's sitting doing her homework and more and more. And my wife's like, I really want to go to Panera Bread and get soup. And I was like, okay, whatever. And so she goes out and she says to the kids, do you want anything? And I was like, uh-oh, here it comes. And so Arden's like, I'm going to have squash soup, pumpkin squash soup, and macaroni and cheese. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I'm like, I'm pushing on this 260. That now it's 260, and I'm pushing. It won't move, and it won't move. And finally, my wife's like, look, I just picked up the food. I'm on my way home. And her blood sugar was still like 260. I want to tell you that I gave her such an obnoxious amount of insulin. Like I was like, a lot has to work out here. Yeah. This is like, because either this food is going to come home and she's still going to be 260 and I'm not going to have the heart to tell her not to eat it. Or I need to get her blood sugar like rock solid falling. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that, it actually worked. But I had to give her so much more than I expected. And I think it's just because she's growing, and I think she's very close to lady time, probably. Not for this month. I mean, for her life. It hasn't actually happened. It hasn't actually happened yet, but it feels like it's coming.
I was going to say, that's when you get those weird lows that you said don't happen.
Really, just out of nowhere, there's no reason for you to be low, and all of a sudden you are.
All of a sudden you're like, why is this happening to me? Yeah.
And that happens to you during your period.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. We did a whole episode with a girl who, I can't think of her name right now. It's called Code Red, the episode. And all we did was talk about what her blood sugar was like during her, that time. She described like, for weeks before, she can tell when it's coming. She can tell, like, it felt to me like dealing with your menstruation, if you have type 1 diabetes, is about a 2.5 to 3 week process a month.
It is.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So do you, I'm assuming it doesn't feel like a process eventually. Eventually it's just.
Yeah, I have like different profile in my pump. I just switch it over.
No kidding. So, you're like, here it comes, switch to a different, different basal.
I use a NuvaRing for birth control, and that helps because then it's very scientific of when I can switch things over.
Okay, so there's a certain day, and literally you change your basal rates and your insulin to carb ratios, and
yep,
and then that's
I'm low for like, take the ring out, and then it starts like 3 days later. That's when I switch it over because then I'm low for the next like 2 days.
Wow.
Then I go back. Yeah.
If I had twins, I'd use 7 of those rings. I would.
Yeah.
So anyway, hey, Arden just tested. Her blood sugar's 117. So that's all good. And I'm going to ask her real quick to see if the CGM's ready to be calibrated, which it might be. And then we're on our way. But Colleen, you and I have been talking for an hour. This was delightful.
Whoa.
Did it feel like it?
No, it didn't.
Good. That's excellent.
We should do this more often.
That's my goal. Are you trying to hone in on my podcast, Colleen? Make your own. I would say make your own podcast, but soon after I made a podcast, a lot of people seem to have an idea to make a podcast. And so, and I'm not taking credit for anything. I'm just saying, find your own thing. Please, leave me alone.
Let me know when you want to talk about diabetes camp.
Yeah. You know what? Let's do that. Which camp do you work at?
The Keystone Diabetic Kids Camp.
Yeah, because you're right. You're in Philly, right?
I'm in Harrisburg.
Harrisburg. Oh, so hey, the school my son committed to was Dickinson.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I actually live in NOLA, like the other side of Harrisburg, so he's pretty close.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, I've only been out there for his visit. And hold on a second, I'm going to tell her, put the number in.
We're in the same county.
No kidding. So we'll talk for another second about things that people would. If you're listening for the diabetes stuff, skip to the end now. So he at one point had 15 schools that were interested, like that initial interest. Like, and all that meant was your GPA and your grades seemed to fit with us, and we like the way you play baseball. And it's a long process of recruiting. It really is something. And then, then some of them will back out because they'll find kids they like better as players. Sometimes your SAT doesn't hit correctly, and teams come away and some more come on. And he had it down to a few really great, really good schools. You would have been thrilled if your kid went to any of these schools. And then we started going on overnight visits and everything. And he was at Dickinson, and I was sitting in a hotel room in Carlisle somewhere, just thinking, this is it. I just sit here, I guess, while he does this thing. And so in the morning, I went to meet him. Because he had to watch he was supposed to go watch another practice with the team after he'd spent the night. And we met there, and he looked at me and he's like, I'm really comfortable here. And I was like, okay, and he had been to some other schools. One of them had co-ed bathrooms.
Ooh.
And he said, here's the quote. I can't completely use the word, so you'll have to insert the word that starts with S and is 4 letters long when I say this. Yeah. But I had to stand in front of my 17-year-old son while he said, Dad, it's weird to take a crap while a girl's taking a shower.
Yeah.
And I was like, that does sound weird, buddy. I said, he's like, it's not like it was right next to each other, but we were in the same space. And I was like,
I wonder if that was my alma mater.
And he goes, I'm not 100% sure I can do that. And I was like joking. It's like, okay. And it wasn't the whole reason he didn't completely love that school. Like, there were other parts about it that just didn't fit with him. But he came out and he's like, Dad, he's like, I think I really want to go to Dickinson. And I was awesome. I said, that's great. I said, you're at this visit with, I think that day I think the baseball team had 3 different visit days. And on that day, there were 13 kids there. And I said, look, man, he likes all these kids. I said, you guys wouldn't be here if he wasn't hopeful to get any number of you. And I said, so if you're really comfortable, you shouldn't don't be coy, Yeah. And so I went and sat down, and from a distance, I watched my son talking to this coach, and then they shook hands, and I was like, oh my God, that's it. I think my son's coming here to play baseball.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very exciting.
I love Carlisle.
Yeah, I tell you, I was only there for a day and a half, but it was a nice little town. Like, it really was.
Yeah. It's really it's up and coming, I would say. They're starting to really renovate and rebuild a lot of that downtown area. It's really nice.
Yeah, I definitely had a good feeling there. The campus was great and everything, and it fits his academics. Like, he was at one school that would have been a daily challenge for him. And not that I think that college shouldn't be challenging, but I was like, I don't know, do you really want to just be beating your head against this wall like every second you're here? Like, don't you think something should be at least on your level, not always working hard, like that kind of, I don't know if that sounds weird or not.
No.
You know what I mean? But like Dickinson, he's like, this place really feels perfect for me. And I was like, okay, great. So,
you're only about 20 minutes away from me.
No kidding. It's not a bad ride either for me, about 2.5 hours.
No, Turnpike. You're good.
Exactly, it wasn't bad at all. Okay, so now for all you other people who don't care about my son going to baseball, in a second I'm going to say goodbye to Colleen, and then you'll hear the stuff at the end of the podcast. So thank you very much, Colleen, for coming on and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
But that conversation was very relaxed. I like that. Thank you very much, Colleen, for coming on and telling your story. Thank you, Dexcom and Omnipod, for sponsoring the podcast. You can go to dexcom.com/juicebox, or, and let's do it in a deeper voice, myomnipod.com/juicebox to find out much more about these wonderful products. If you're looking for a CGM or an insulin pump, I cannot more highly recommend the Dexcom or the Omnipod. Don't forget, too, back in episode 174, if you just don't want an insulin pump, check out the InPen, the smart insulin pen from Companion Medical. Episode 174. Go take a looky. Going to be back next week with more of the Juicebox Podcast. Ta-ta!